so we're going to start off with completing the estimate form in PCSE Online. Now, the practice estimate form, it should be completed via PCSE Online. Now, it is really important that when completing it, that you complete it as accurate as possible. Now, one of the main reasons for that is just to try and avoid any large adjustments at the practice when the end of year certificates are reconciled. Now, the estimate form is really simple to complete. The form itself, it pre-populates with all the details of the active pension scheme member, which means you just need to go into the form and enter their estimated pensionable pay, along with the tier rate that's relevant for that GP, and click submit. However, we will run through all the details with you now, and we're going to start off with tier rates. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hand you over to my colleague Katrina, and who will make a start on tier rates.
So as Debbie says, we're just going to start with the tier rates for 25-26. As you'll see on the screen, if you haven't already become aware through NHS Pensions communications, then the tier rates are a bit different for 25-26. So we're now down to 6 different tiers altogether, and you can see that the bottom band 5.2% applies on pensionable earnings up to 13,484, but then the top band will now be 12.5%, and that applies to earnings of 63,994 and above, and then you've got 4 different salary bands in between. So it's a little bit of a shorter list of options to select from than a couple of years ago, and obviously that highest tier rate percentage is now 12.5%, whereas a couple of years ago it was 14.5%. So this tier rate is the percentage of the pensionable pay that the pension scheme member needs to pay in employee contributions, and then there's obviously the employer contributions that also get deducted from the practice each month. The rate that get deducted from the practice will stay at 14.38% as it has been. There is a difference in the overall employer tier rates to the 14.38% there has been for the last few years, but that's made up centrally. So from a practice point of view, then the percentage that gets deducted for employer contributions stays at 14.38%. So if we move on to the form itself, so on PCSE Online, then Debbie will talk about user management and making sure you've got the correct role to access. But if you have the access role to be able to complete estimates on PCSE Online, then when you log in, you'll see one of your options will be for estimates. And when you click estimates, you'll see 2 buttons like you see in front of you on the screen now. To the left is practice estimate, and to the right is practice estimate listing. So you click practice estimate, and then we will see that you have an option when you go to do that right now. You'll have an option to select from the 24-25 pension year or 25-26. We're obviously going to concentrate on 25-26 as the new pension year that we're submitting the estimate form for. But because we're not yet at the end of 24-25 pension year, that option is still available. When it comes to the 1st of April, then the 24-25 option won't be there anymore. So let's just move on to what we see when we've selected the financial year or the pension year. And as Debbie has mentioned, all of the GPs and non-GP partners who are active pension scheme members at your practice will, their name and their NHS Pensions membership number will auto-populate onto the estimate screen for you. So you'll have that list. It starts off with GP partners at the top, then the salaried GPs underneath that, and if you have any non-GP partners, then they are listed underneath that again. Now this example, this practice is quite a small practice. It only has 3 active GP pension scheme members, but obviously for some of you, you might have quite a few more than that. But when the screen populates with their details, what you'll see then is that your pensionable pay and tier rate boxes are all blank, or they've got zeros and still to be completed. So if we go on to the next screen, then we'll see that the key areas that we need to be completing are highlighted. So you've obviously got the pensionable pay, whether that's estimated profit or estimated salary, depending on whether it's a partner or a salary GP. So that goes into column A on the PCSE Online screen. So in our example here, our first doctor has 120,000 estimated income, the second has 60,000, and then we've got a salaried GP at 48 estimated income for that practice role. If there is any estimated bed fund income or anything like that, you can add that in column B. But the other key column is then the tier rate column. So you will see that the system allows you to select any of the tier rate options, regardless of what you enter in column A for the pensionable pay. And that's because sometimes a GP might know that their circumstances are going to change later in the year, and they might advise you of that. So it may be that the tier rate that you select is slightly different to what the tier rate table would suggest based on their estimated income at this point in time, because we'll come on to revised estimates a bit later on, but it may be that it's linked to some changes that they are aware of. But also importantly, as you'll see on the second doctor, Dr. B. Demmel, they have some solo income that they're expecting to earn. So yes, your practice, the estimated profit share for them is 60,000, but actually they're expecting or estimating to earn about 30,000 in solo income. And when you put these two together, then obviously that would take them to the higher tier, and that's why they would be then saying, well, actually I should be on 12.5%. And then our GP at the bottom has a estimated income of 48,000 as a salary GP. They haven't informed of any other roles, but they've indicated the tier rate that they should be on. So your local discussions with the GPs that work for you would be a really kind of for you to manage, but ultimately it's in your best interest to have conversations with them about any other additional roles that they might have or are expecting to have. Because if you start off deducting at a low tier rate because that's what their estimated income for your practice suggests, but then it turns out that they've got all these other multiple roles and they should have been on 12.5%, then when it gets to that GP submitting their end of year certificate for 25-26, when that cycle comes round, you'll find that you've got quite a practice shortfall to make up, which clearly the objective of the estimate, as Debbie says, is to keep them as accurate as possible so that we minimise any adjustments that you need to face against the practice in future. So when we've completed all of the information for all of the GPs, then that's when we get on to submit. So there's a submit button at the bottom of the screen. When you've submitted the estimate, then that's all you need to do. However, it's good practice to go immediately to the listing screen. So still in that estimate button in the main GP pensions area on PCSE Online. But as we said earlier, you've got two options there. So we've looked at the practice estimate option to complete and submit the estimate. But once you've submitted it, if you go to the practice estimate listing, then what you'll see is you'll have the estimates listed that you've submitted in that pension year. So you've got your estimates listed there, and if I've just submitted an estimate this afternoon, then immediately you can click on the blue hyperlink for the estimate that you have just submitted, and it will display the details. Now at the bottom of the page, if you click the print button as is shown there, then what you'll be able to see is a PDF version of that estimate that you've just submitted. So you can save that for your records. if you don't have to print it, you can save it and keep it for your records. It's always there on PCSE Online, so you don't need to save a copy, but I know that a lot of practice managers do like to save a copy. But what what is really valuable to be able to do is you're going immediately back into that screen and you're looking, checking, if that was, 67,435.11, is that what I meant to enter? We have seen instances where somebody may have accidentally put in an extra digit in there, and that would be 674,350.11. And, kind of, if you've checked it and you see it, then you can immediately submit a revised estimate. You don't need to panic. Obviously, if you don't check it, then you'll not know, whether there's a tiny risk that you make a manual error. So this gives you the opportunity to check. So you can check it on the screen when you go into the listing screen. If everything's as you're expecting it to be, then you can go to this print option to bring up this PDF so that you can save it for your records. But what's also useful is when you go to and bring up the PDF, then you'll see very easily what the monthly employee contributions are. So just to take a step back, when you've entered that annual estimated income for your pension scheme member, then what the system does is it divides that amount by 12, and then it looks at the tier rate that you've selected and it multiplies the monthly estimated income by the tier rate to calculate the employee contributions, and then it multiplies the monthly estimated income by the 14.38% employer's contribution rate to calculate the employer contributions, and that is what's deducted from your practice statement on a monthly basis. So to resubmit the estimate form, then you go to the practice estimate button again. So if you've already submitted an estimate, so we're back in that same area of PCSE Online, and we're going to submit a practice estimate again. And what you'll find this time is, because we've already submitted an estimate for that year, then the screen will auto-populate with the figures that we've already submitted. But this time, in the listing screen, they'll be greyed out because that's the captured data that I submitted at for that particular estimate. But when I'm going back into the listing screen, it's going to give me the opportunity to overwrite the estimated income, to change the tier rate if I need to, and then that will change the calculations going forwards. So if we've got somebody who, starts out on a low estimated income, and I've selected the tier rate accordingly, then if circumstances change and they're going to be, doing a higher proportion of their time as a partner at the surgery or whatever, and, I'm going to be saying, well, their estimated income is maybe now 120,000, then if that was such, so clearly I'll be entering the new figure for the estimated annual income, and then checking the tier rate, whether I need to make a change to the tier rate. Now, when I click submit on a revised estimate, what happens is the system calculates the new figures going forwards. So it will use that annual estimated income divided by 12. So the new annual estimated income divided by 12 to get the monthly and the new monthly estimated income. And then for the months that follow for the rest of the year, it will apply that different amount of employee contributions and employer contributions in the practice monthly statement. So it changes and updates going forwards. It doesn't backdate. So if you're a month or two late in submitting the revised estimate because your GP partner had a change of circumstances a few weeks ago, then don't worry too much about that, because even if there is a little bit of a gap, that gap will be made up when the GP partner submits their end of year certificate. Whereas obviously if you don't submit a revised estimate at all, and you've maybe got 6 months of quite a different income or estimated income, then you would be left with a really large adjustment when it comes to the end of year certificate. And I think we were just going to mention before I pause the salary change form. So for salaried GPs, it is a little bit different. You can use the revised estimate, but for salaried GPs, because it's a known salary, then there's a salary change form. And when you go to the salary change form on PCSE Online, then you'll have a screen, as we can see on the slide there, and it's a very simple screen. You select the salaried GP. If you've got more than one at your practice, you'll have a list in the drop down. You select the start date for the new salary, so you'll enter that new income start date, and you'll enter the new pensionable income. You'll confirm the tier rate, and you'll click to confirm and submit. And that will, if I was completing that today, but the GP changed salary from the 1st of January or the 1st of December, then I can enter the dates as long as it's in the same pension year. I can enter that new date as a retrospective date as long as it's within the same pension year. If something again isn't done within the pension year, that all needs to be reconciled when it comes to the GP submitting their, in this case, if they were salaried, it would be a type 2 end of year form. And obviously if it was a partner and you didn't submit a revised estimate, but they had a change of circumstances, then as I mentioned, that would be reconciled when it comes to the partner submitting their type 1 end of year form.